It's 1 a.m. and I am in my hotel room because I got kicked out of Tata Steel. Yes, security kicked me away. I was planning on doing this video, in the playing hall just like yesterday, but they closed everything down, so I had to go back to my hotel and now we're here. But people, I saw today the greatest game that I've ever seen live. Like I'm not kidding. It's such a fascinating game. And I actually don't have words for it. There were queen sacrifices, there were brilliant moves, there were rook sacrifices. I honestly have no words for it. So we're going to start with the game immediately. This is round 12 of Tata Steel Chess Masters. The first game that I'm going to show you is between Magnus and Praggnanandhaa, and this is the game that it blew my mind. The game started with knight f3, knight f6. Now keep in mind that Magnus, to be able to win this tournament, had to win this game, and he knew it when the game started, as he drew yesterday. So Magnus really needed to win today and to win tomorrow if he wanted to have, or if he wanted to win the tournament, basically. That was the most probable thing. So he knew it starting this game. So c4, c5, this became an English symmetrical opening. And here, it was just like, Praggnanandhaa was just basically like not copying. But this is a symmetrical opening. So, he's doing the exact same moves as Magnus is doing all the way here. And now a3. And in this position, d takes c4, bishop takes c4, and now a6. The idea is to go b5 and to kick away this bishop. And this is a very sound opening. It's very solid. So far, it doesn't seem like the game is going to become as crazy as it did. Bishop d3, and now there was some exchanges of pawns, and g6. Praggnanandhaa wants to develop his bishop through g7 to put some pressure on this d4 pawn. He's also blocking Magnus' bishop from ever becoming strong or from ever being able to attack the king. So far this looks insanely sound. Bishop g5, bishop g7, and now Magnus did this really interesting move, bishop e4. Now the knight cannot capture the bishop because the queen is hanging. So his idea with bishop e4 is that he wants to capture on c6 and destroy the pawn structure of Praggnanandhaa here. And he didn't like that because the pawns would become very scattered and he would just get a really bad pawn structure. So here he played knight e7, he went back with the knight, and now Magnus went h4. And this is the start of this game just becoming absolutely insane. Now, what is the idea of h4? Well, the idea is that he's just basically saying that sometimes he wants to create an attack towards the king. Sometimes he's going to be capturing here. Sometimes he might go h5. He has several ideas. So actually here h6 was played, kicking away the bishop, takes, and queen d2, stopping black from being able to castle as the pawn on h6 will be hanging then. So the rook is now forced to stay here, defending the pawn, and knight d5 was played. And these moves are not terrible, but they're small inaccuracies that are leading to Magnus getting this really great position. And here Magnus went for a really good move, which is h5. What is the idea of h5? He's trying to fix the pawn structure of black so that the pawns are in dark squares. If he would do something random here, then Praggnanandhaa would have time to play h5 himself, and then actually with the bishop on g7, the king after castles would become pretty safe. So Magnus really wants to go to h5, forcing him to go g5 and now go knight e5. And now in this position, he's stopping black from going g4, and he just has a fantastic knight. And this bishop can never capture the knight, because if it does, then the king is just going to become so weak when he castles short side, and he cannot castle queen side, because after rook comes up to c1, the king over here is just going to be too weak. So the king is just now in a lot of trouble. So bishop g7 was played, and here Magnus did maybe a little bit of a surprising move. I thought he was going to go knight takes and that he was going to try to prepare some form of battery with the queen and the bishop, but he captured with the bishop on d5, pawn takes, castles, and now bishop e6. And now in this position, there's the ideas of going f4 all the time in the air, but here rook a1 was played first, castles, rook e3, he's bringing the rook up. He also wants to maybe go rook e1 and double up the rooks on the e file. And now bishop f5, queen d1, and people, rook e8 was played. Now, when he played rook e8, there was this tactic that I was sure Magnus was seeing. I was doing a big analysis of Magnus' body language, and I was looking at him. I was seeing this live. I was at the playing hall, and I was looking at him, and I was like, he knows that there's a tactic here. His whole face was saying that. He looked so confident. He looked kind of shocked. I really thought that he knew that there was a tactic here. And then He didn't. He just went rook e1. But in this position, he has knight takes f7, which is a beautiful tactic, which simply wins a pawn, as if Praggnanandhaa, if he captures the knight, there's rook f3 pinning the bishop, and there's no way of defending the bishop. If you go queen d7 defending, there's g4, this is pinned, the king has to move, and then rook takes f5, and this is now just a pawn advantage for Magnus. This is a really good position, really, really good. So after rook fe1, I was surprised. Bishop e6, Praggnanandhaa realized that he had blundered the pawn, so he went back with the bishop, and now knight a4. So now Magnus needs to find another idea and try to bring up the knight, or just simply try to find another idea of rerouting his pieces. Now b6 was played, rook b3, threatening the pawn, and after queen c7, Magnus did a move that, let's put it this way, this is probably a move that, you know, he's going to have nightmares about for a little while. And okay, guys, yes, actually chess players do have nightmares. Like, this sounds super strange, but yes, like, chess players do have nightmares about their moves. Like, guys, I know, I've had it too. I've even had nightmares where I've woken up because I was getting checkmated in one move. I don't know if this sounds crazy to most of you. It probably does, but I have. So, anyways, in this position, Magnus thought, and he said this in his interview, he thought that it didn't matter if he took with the rook or if he took with the knight. So he didn't calculate too much and he just took with the knight. But taking with the rook is so much better. And Magnus said that there was a miscalculation by him. Taking with the rook is so much better because now, I mean, the only move that black really has, Magnus has taken a pawn. I mean, this is just a free pawn. Black has to go bishop d7 to threaten to take the knight and then take the rook. But after a big exchange here, let's say that there's just a big exchange of things here, this is just an absolutely fantastic position after something like knight c3. Magnus is a pawn up, and this is a very, very, very comfortable position for him. There's not much counterplay for Praggnanandhaa. But after he took here with the knight, Praggnanandhaa played insanely well from this point. Like, insanely well, very surprisingly well. So rook a b8, knight a4 was played, takes and takes. There was some exchanges. Now bishop takes e5, takes, and queen a5, threatening the rook. Now queen d1, defending the rook, and now bishop g4. He's sacrificing a bishop, but the idea is that if Magnus takes the bishop, then the rook on e1 is hanging. So f3, kicking away the bishop. Now the bishop goes back, threatening this knight, but now, you know, there's this diagonal that is open that can be very annoying for the king, which you will see. So knight went back to c3, and now Praggnanandhaa did a very important move, queen c5 check, because if he doesn't do this move, if, you know, he does anything else, then Magnus is going to place a queen on d4, and this queen is just going to be a monster. So queen c5, king h2, and now d4, and now Magnus played a brilliant move. If Magnus goes anywhere else, like for instance, I mean, right now this bishop is hanging, but you know, if Magnus just moves this knight, he's just going to be losing the e5 pawn, and he cannot lose the e5 pawn, at least if he's not gaining anything. Magnus played a brilliant move, rook e4. The idea is that now, if rook takes e5, he can go queen takes d4, and he can capture this pawn, and then he's just going to be completely fine. He's going to be a pawn up. But he's sacrificing a knight here. So, pawn takes knight, and now everybody, this is when the game starts becoming really crazy. Praggnanandhaa Magnus is able to get the bishop, and now Praggnanandhaa goes c2, one step away from promotion, but he's sacrificing the rook with check. I mean, I just find it so fascinating. Praggnanandhaa is straight up sacrificing his rook with check. So queen takes e8. When I saw this, I was like, you know, there were like people standing all around the board, because Anish Giri, he was standing there, so many super jams, and they were like, what's going on here? What is this game? So king g7, and now, I mean, you need to stop the promotion. So b4, threatening the queen, queen c3, and now Magnus straight up allowed Praggnanandhaa to promote to queen. f4. There's not even any clear immediate checkmate. I mean, the idea is to go f5 and create an attack towards the king. But now there's two queens on the board. There's three queens in total. 3 queens. I mean, this is insane. f5 was played, queen c7, it's really important. He's pinning this pawn, but he's also defending over here. And this is really important, but there's actually another hidden idea, because this queen c7 move is crucial. If he goes anywhere else with the queen, Pragg actually loses. So f6 check, king h7, and queen f8. And it may look like there's no way now for Pragg to stop Magnus' checkmate on g7, but what does Praggnanandhaa do? He makes a brilliant queen sacrifice. Queen takes e5. He sacrificed a full queen for a pawn with the idea that now he's rerouting the rook away from the protection of this square. And after a few checks, he's able to take the rook and the pawn. And now there's no checkmate for Magnus and it's equal material. We've now entered an equal queen endgame after all of this. But this does not end here because Magnus did not want to draw. Magnus wanted to win. So here, everyone thought that this would become, a very simple draw. But here, Magnus, he kept pushing. I mean, he kept pushing and he kept trying to get the king up because he was trying to win this pawn and then push these pawns into promotion. And this became absolutely amazing. So this is a brilliant game, a4. Now he's going a5 with the idea of going b5 and sacrificing the pawn to be able to try to promote. The issue here is that the pawn on g2 is quite weak. So queen takes g2, b5, and now this g pawn gets some insane counterattack. Keep in mind that this is at this point, I mean, it's 3 pawns versus basically 1 passed pawn because these are doubled. So this became a crazy race and Magnus was doing everything to win. And now he went for this idea king d6, which I think is beautiful. I was expecting him to go king b6, but then the issue is that the g2 pawn is just pushing. So king d6, g2, and now king e5. What is the idea? Well, the queen is staying here, stopping the promotion. And now, I mean, this is just absolutely beautiful. And also here, this check, it just doesn't work because you're going to be promoting as well. So king e5, queen f3, queen d8 check. And now, I mean, this almost could have been 4 queens at this point, but there were some checks. And now, now we just got an exchange and then there became another queen. And at this point, after a few checks, this became a draw. Sorry, king e4 never happened. So this became a draw over here. At this point, Praggnanandhaa offered a draw, and that is what happened. So Magnus Carlsen versus Praggnanandhaa became a draw. It was an insane game, a fantastic opening for Magnus. He's probably very frustrated about not being able to win after that great opening. But Praggnanandhaa, that defense, he's 17 years old, that defense was just brilliant. It was amazing, and it was so cool to see all of this live. Now, Magnus is on 7 points, and the number 1 is right now on 8 points. Norderbeck is on 8 points. So, you would need a miracle for Magnus to have Norderbeck lose tomorrow and Magnus win and, all the results going in his favor for him to be able to get a shared first prize. It's not impossible, but it's going to be hard. Now, everybody, we're going to move on to the next game that I'm going to show you. It was a decisive game, and you know that when Richard Rapport is playing, I mean, it's going to get good. It's going to get good. I know that most of you guys want to watch Magnus, you want to watch this, you want to watch that, but guys, Rapport, he is fun to watch when it comes to chess. It's amazing. So e4, c5, knight f3, d6, this became a Sicilian, but we all know that Rapport doesn't play normal openings. Instead, he goes for stuff like queen takes d4, which is definitely not a common move in the open Sicilian. You typically capture here with the knight. Why is it uncommon to capture with the queen? Because the queen can very easily get kicked away with stuff like knight c6. Now this is called the checkover variation. So knight f6, knight c3. Keep in mind that Ding is going to play the World Chess Championship match in a couple of months. So he's right now he's right now in preparation. Ding, unfortunately, has lost a lot of rating in this tournament. He's not 2800 anymore. He hasn't had the best tournament in the world, but hopefully he's able to come back for the World Chess Championship because he might become World Chess Champion this year. So long castles, obviously Rapport going for some beautiful, fun long castles. Bishop e7, queen d3. And now this became a very double-edged position, also with h4. And he's going for an attack. So bishop d2. Now pinning the queen. Now the queen went to a6, and here there was an exchange of queens. When this happened, I was a little bit like, oh, are we really exchanging queens like this? Is this really going to be fun? But guys, this game shows that even, when you exchange queens, the games can be fun. Endgames can be fun, everybody, because it doesn't have to become an endgame. So rook d1, and now e5 was played, and this was maybe a little slight inaccuracy by Ding because it leaves the squares f5 and d5 available, and this positionally could mean a lot of trouble in the future. Because if Rapport is able to get a knight to any of these squares, he's going to be controlling a big chunk of the position. So knight h2 is a brilliant idea by Rapport, with the idea of going knight f1 and knight e3 and rerouting the knight to get to one of these squares. Now this is something that he's doing now because there's not really any pawn breaks happening in the position. So it's a good moment to do it now, as this position is quite slow right now. So knight f1, and now Ding with this really important move f5. If he doesn't do it now, he's never going to do it because Rapport will be getting a knight over here. The idea is that if now e takes f5, then there's going to be castles, and he's going to be looking a little bit towards this pawn and this pawn on g2, but this would still be a very good position for Rapport. I mean, after knight e3, maybe there can be some d5 at some point. So Ding would try to get some counterplay, but f3 was played by Rapport instead, and then there was some captures here. So takes, knight f6 going back, and now knight g3, and now this f5 square is still available for the knight, but the knight has just taken a different path. So rook f8, the king is staying in the center, and now knight f5, rook f7, and h5, stopping this pawn from being able to push. This pawn is now controlling two pawns at the same time, which is what you want to do. So bishop f8. Now the knight went back, we saw a little bit of rerouting, and now the next knight is going back. I mean, guys, I feel like backwards knight moves is such a super jam idea, but it makes sense. You guys will see also what the idea is with this. Rook c7, Ding was right now trying to get a little bit of play towards the c2 pawn. Bishop a5, threatening the rook went back, and now rook h4. Very, very, very creative. He's defending this pawn on e4, and now after d5, captures, and now this rook over here, which looked like it wasn't really good. I mean, now this rook is actually quite well placed, but we have rook takes e5 here with check. The king went up to f7, and now bishop b4. He wants to exchange these bishops because actually here Ding has the bishop here, and this can become kind of hard to play against, and the bishop on a5 is just really not that good placed. So bishop takes g2, and now there were some exchanges, and knight e3. So the knight is coming up, and once again we're playing, but Rapport is playing with the squares. He's trying to get his knight up to a good square. It's a lot about rerouting this game. Bishop b7, b3, and now rook e8. There was some exchange of rooks, and in this position c4. And now actually Rapport is just saying, okay, we're entering an endgame right now. This is now a full endgame. We've exchanged a pair of rooks. There's not that many pieces on the board. So now I'm just going to push my passed pawn. The c pawn is a passed pawn. It's the only passed pawn of the position. So he's going to push it. So king f7, king c2, both are trying to get the king up in the game. And now rook h2, which is a fantastic move with ideas of going stuff like rook f2 and pinning. King e6, just bring the king to the center, and now rook e2, just going for some discovery checks. Now guys, you know how I tell you that most of the times when your king is in the same file as your opponent's rook, you should probably get your king out from here. And at this point, Ding was very low on time. This was move 36. He was very low on time, and he decided to not go for that. He went for bishop f3. Now it would have been a much better option to go for king f7, but he went for bishop f3, threatening the rook. But now the rook just simply went to e1. And now was the moment where it was crucial for Ding to get the king out of the way. But Ding decided to get a pawn instead. Ding got really excited about the pawn on h5 and probably didn't see this tactic that Rapport had. So he went knight takes h5, and this is a big blunder because there's this beautiful move, knight g4, discovery check. It's a check right now. The king cannot go to f7 because there's a fork. The king cannot go to e7. The king cannot go here. The king cannot go here. The only move that the king can go to is to d6. But after king d6, there is knight f5 check. Both of the knights are dancing. Both of the knights are coming up. King c7, and now knight e5, threatening the rook and the bishop. And after g4, I mean, Rapport gets an exchange. And after king d2, Ding Liren resigns. And I thought that this was a beautiful positional game. And then at the end, it became really beautiful tactically. It was a one move basically blundered by Ding, unfortunately, but you can see that even at this top level, Ding Liren is number 2 in the world. These things happen even if you're the second best player in the world at something. So guys, the last game that I'm going to show you is going to be the game between the two super grandmasters from the Netherlands, Jordan Van Foreest and Anish Giri. Now, why am I going to show you this game? Because this game was huge in terms of, the importance of it. Anish Giri was, prior to this game, ranked 2nd in the tournament. So if Anish got a win today, he would be able to catch up to the number 1, and if he won tomorrow, he would probably win the whole tournament. So this is a huge game. Magnus kept on checking on Anish Giri to see how this game was going, because it's a little bit the race, Magnus, Anish Giri, and then Norbek, who's right now ranked number 1. So Anish is quite a lot higher rated than Jordan. Jordan hasn't been having such a great tournament, so actually I feel like Anish maybe went to a game feeling like this will be at least easy to draw, but maybe he can push for the win with the black pieces, but it'll be a safe draw. Let me tell you, this was the opposite of that, and this was crazy. The opening was just amazing. Jordan Van Foreest had prepared, I think some like 25 moves. I'm going to show you guys. This became an anti-Nimso, so he's basically stopping bishop b4. So takes and takes, and knight c3, and now bishop b4. This became now a Ragozin. That's the name of the line when you go for this. So bishop f4, knight e4, and then rook c1 with the idea of just defending this knight. Now knight c6, and now h4. Like, what's the deal with h4? Everyone's been playing h4 today. In all the games that I've shown you, h4 has been played. Like, I'm gonna start playing it every game. Bishop f5 developing, and now e3. And this now just loses an exchange for Jordan. Jordan sacrificed an exchange in the opening, but he was blitzing out these moves. In fact, at one point, Jordan had 1 more hour on the clock than Anish Giri, pretty much, which was kind of crazy. So he was super well prepared. We can see here that the rook is trapped. If the rook goes to a1, there's bishop b2, and the rook is trapped. So rook b1, he sacrificed, and now the idea was to go queen b3, and his idea was just simply to get initiative. Like, there's nothing immediate, but he's just basically saying that his minor pieces are really good. He's gonna get an attack against the king when the king castles, which, it did become an attack, and that is what he's playing for. So I'm pretty sure that he had prepared all of this. Now there's queen takes d5. Anish was scared of going bishop e7, I think, because after h5 and castles, bishop d3, this king could become a little bit unsafe. So he wanted to trade a lot of stuff. Now queen e4 check in between, because otherwise, he doesn't want to exchange. Jordan doesn't want to exchange queens. So queen e4 check, queen e7, and now queen captures the bishop, so that there's no exchange of queens. Queen a3 threatening this pawn, and now queen e4 check and queen c2, getting the queen back. And like I said, Jordan was blitzing out these moves, and Jordan has compensation here for the exchange. So knight went up, threatening the pawn, and now c4, and knight c3 was played. What is the idea of knight c3? Well, it is just a little bit threatening the pawn, but also limiting this king's movement. But this move is a little bit scary because the knight almost looks like it's getting trapped. So c5 was played, and this was still all preparation. Jordan was just, Anish was sitting there. He looked so uncomfortable with his position. He kept on thinking. Jordan, he was just basically like, he looked so relaxed, and this was all preparation. So c5, b6, bishop c4, and now captures. And castles was played, and h5. So actually here, the only move pretty much that Anish has that, is good is to go rook b4 and threaten this bishop. Why? Because there's actually some crazy lines. Let's say that right now, Anish would go something like a5. I just need to show you. Then there is then there is knight g5 in this position, and the idea is that after g6 there is takes, and queen takes g6 because of this pin over here. Is that not amazing? I think it's just beautiful. So this just actually becomes a checkmate. So he cannot, do nothing. He needs to threaten this bishop, because this bishop that Jordan has is a monster right now. So queen b4 was played, and this was a blunder. And now actually after knight g5, Jordan is winning. Jordan has an amazing position. After g6, he needs to defend the bishop, so he went queen d3, which is a great move. Jordan is playing amazingly. Rook b6, and now Jordan went for d takes d5. And this move, it's fine. The engine is saying it's a blunder, but it's a little bit going back and forth. This is fine. This is fine. And now queen takes c5 doesn't work because of an idea, but rook c6 does also not work because of an idea, and this was an idea that Jordan just kept on missing. Knight takes f7, which is a beautiful move. The idea being that after rook takes f7, we see that there is this pin going on, and after queen d8 check, king g7, and h6 check, this becomes absolutely insane. But after bishop takes f7, this is just much better for Jordan. But he missed this idea probably because he was scared of Anish having moves like check, and at some point after king h1 there's these checkmate ideas, so that was probably the reason he was scared of that. But I just find this absolutely amazing. So in this position, instead he went for h takes g6 instead of going for knight takes f7 and then f4. And now things started, once again, he kept on like not seeing this knight takes f7 move. So on f4, rook g7, and here, guys, rook c1 was played, which was good, threatening the knight. But after knight a4, Jordan missed this idea of basically trapping the knight. He has this idea of going a3. You can see this knight cannot go to a lot of places. The threat of going knight a4 is to go knight b2 and fork the bishop and the queen. But now, this knight doesn't have a lot of places to go to. So here he had this fantastic move, a3, where if the queen goes somewhere, the queen has maybe to go to b8. There is this move, bishop b3, and the knight is pretty much trapped. Because if knight b2, then there would be something like simply queen c3, and the knight would be trapped. So this would have been absolutely fantastic, but he missed this idea, and instead he went knight e4. And this actually, the knight is not doing anything on e4. The knight wants to be here to maybe go knight takes f7 at some point. So this move was definitely a blunder in this position. And after knight b2, a change of queens was forced. And now, I mean, that was kind of uncomfortable for Jordan because he's an exchange down in an endgame. So he's going to have to, I mean, he has some play because he has a pawn, but it's still very unclear. So bishop c2, and now it's crucial. The knight cannot go anywhere. That Anish plays f5, threatening the knight. If the knight moves, there's knight takes c5. So here there was just takes, and takes. And now Jordan has 2 pawns for the exchange, but a lot of his pawns are very weak. So rook b4, defending the bishop, and rooks are just really strong in the endgame. And now this a pawn was gone, and this, Anish a pawn became very strong. So g4, h6, f5, he kept on pushing with the pawns, tried to bring the king up. But the issue was that this h6 pawn is just stopping the king from going up to g5 and being able to push further. So rook d4, king f6, the king is fantastically played here. He tried to push his e pawn instead. He went back, threatening this pawn, he went back, and he was really trying to find some sort of magic here. And now c6, with the idea of maybe at some point going king e3 and rook d7 and then trying to promote. So a5, Anish just started pushing his pawn. You can see here there's a lot of rerouting. He's trying to get his bishop and the king to the best position, but the a pawn just keeps pushing. And now this could become quite scary. It was crucial for Jordan to find this rook f8 and going back, and the rook always behind the pawn. That's the best place for it to be. The thing is that even though this pawn is on a2, it's kind of hard for it to promote, because for it to promote he needs to get this rook to this rank, and it's not easy to do that. So now e5, there's the f6 threat, and I mean now Anish found the only move that was good, which was rook e8, which Chess.com is giving a brilliant move. The idea is just to sacrifice the rook, but you cannot take it because then there's going to be a queen promotion. So rook a7, threatening the pawn, and now a king over here, e6, rook f2. This is just a fantastic game. And now actually Jordan realized that his king, he wants to go this way so that he can try to bring the king up. King g7, he took here c7 with check, but now the king is going up to f6. King g5, the king is going all the way. The rook went back to a7. Rook d8 check, the king is moving around. Bishop has to move, and bishop c2. He's right now blocking the protection of the a2 pawn, so Jordan really wants to pick up this pawn. But now rook d6 saying, hey, if you take this pawn, I'm going to take your c6 pawn, which is also really scary. So takes, king b3, and now he tried to push his e7 pawn, and he was doing everything here. He was trying to go rook e6, and now there is this move from Anish, rook takes c2. And you may say, Anna, what happens if there's a queen that's made? And that is exactly what happened. A queen was made, and look at this, repetition on the board. If the king goes here, and If the king goes here, then there's just rook takes queen. So black would be a rook up. So king has to go back, and this was repetition, and the game ended in a draw. But it was an insane draw, and it was the longest game of today's round. It was almost 7 hours long, 79 moves, and an absolutely insane game between Jordan and Anish. And there was a really funny interview after this as well, where Anish talked about how good Jordan looks. Anyways, guys, that was a really funny interview, so you guys can watch that if you want to. But it was a really crazy game, and now Anish is still on second rank. He has 7.5 points. Norderbeck is on 8 points, and Magnus and Wesley are on 7 points. Tomorrow, it's going to be crazy. We will get a winner of Tata Steel Chess Masters. Will Norderbeck win? Will Anish win? Nobody knows, but we will know tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed today's recap, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye!